Let's try this. All right, we got audio. Sorry about that. Trying a new camera and didn't realize it didn't have audio connected with it. Thank you for joining. I know it's late in the day, but maybe this is when your encouragement is needed. I'm, again, multitasking and trying to do two things, probably more like four things at once, but I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Right now for me it's a Wednesday night, so we've got church that we'll be having here in about an hour or so, and getting ready for the day that way, having had a day at work. I don't know what your day's been like, but hopefully it's been an enjoyable one. We're going to go straight into it because it's a big passage and I don't want to skimp on anything, but I want to make sure I do my best to encourage you today. And what I discovered from yesterday's video after I posted it was that it cut off short when I was trying to conclude. So hopefully I don't do the same thing today. As you have been following along, we've been going through Matthew chapter 26 and using Jesus as our example of how we should be getting through life and dealing with things that we deal with in our lives. Because you know what? I can't tell you I know what it's like to go through whatever it is you're going through, just like you couldn't say it to me. I mean, you may have something similar, and I may have something similar, but it won't be the same. So I shouldn't act like it's been the same. So I'm not going to. So we think about the different difficulties Jesus has dealt with. The most recent one that we talked about in the last video was the betrayal of one of the 12, and that's of Judas. So now where we're at is in Matthew 26, starting in verse 57. This is a really long chapter if you haven't caught on to it. And if you this is when Jesus stands before the Sanhedrin. And it says, "And they that laid hold on Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Peter followed him from afar unto the high priest's palace, and went in, and sat with the servants to see the end. Now the chief priests and elders and all the council sought false witness against Jesus, to put him to death, but found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At the last came two false witnesses, and said, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God, and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose, and said unto him, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witnesses What is it which these witness against thee? But Jesus held his peace. And the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus saith unto him, Thou hast said. Nevertheless I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power, and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He hath spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now ye have heard his blasphemy. What think ye? They answered and said, He is guilty of death. Then did they spit in his face and buffeted him, and others smote him with the palms of their hands, saying, Prophesy unto us, thou Christ. Who is thee that smote thee? Now you might say, this is not encouraging, but truthfully it is. This is what Jesus went through for you and me. This is what he suffered for you and for me. So remember, he just was betrayed by one of the 12. What's worse for me, as as myself coming before you now, what sucks about that is to think that one of the 12 that was closest to him was going to betray him, and he knew it anyway, and he still let it happen for you and for me. You've probably had someone betray you, someone abandon you, someone just give up on you, someone leave you, whatever it is. You've had that happen. But did you know it was going to happen and still go forward anyway? That's the example Jesus set for us. He knew what he was supposed to do. It was laid out for him what he was supposed to do, and he still did it. Take that into your life now. You know what's right and what's wrong. I know what's right and what's wrong. I know what I should be doing. Am I still doing it? Or am I using whatever event in my life to discourage me? See, there are other verses in the Bible that we can use, but people don't want to hear those. They don't want to hear the platitudes. They don't want to hear, oh, God has a reason and a purpose for you to go through this. You don't want to hear me tell you, yeah, that person that offended you, God's going to provide justice, and he's going to avenge you if you're actually truly in the right. You don't want to hear me say, hey, yeah, that person did wrong, but what about you? What was your part? What is your role? What was your blame in all of this? You don't want to hear that. You want to hear, I'm sorry that happened to you. You're at blame. You're at fault. It's not what Jesus did. Jesus sat there and knew what was coming, and he went anyway. Go to verse 59. Now the chief priests and elders and all the council sought false witness against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Okay, think about this again. Not only did Jesus know what was coming, he, even when false witnesses were found, was still found innocent. They couldn't find someone to be convincing enough to find Jesus guilty, because he wasn't guilty, and he took the burden and the stress and the pain and the punishment for you. I don't want to minimize what you and I go through, because you know what, I've got stuff going on now that sucks. I'm sorry if I'm using not kosher words, not necessarily inappropriate, but not kosher words. But it sucks. It truly does suck. And I can't change it. I can't fix it. And while I know God can, I don't think he's doing that right now. At least not in my view. But my view doesn't matter in this. His view does. His reason, his purpose. Friends that are dealing with loved ones that are dying of sicknesses. Obviously you don't go up to them and go, well, they're probably going to die. You don't do stuff like that. You're like, I pray, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to take it before God. But what do you pray to God? Do I sit there and say, Lord, heal that person? Of course. I don't want my friends, those close to me, to lose loved ones. But what if then that person still dies? Did God answer my prayer? He did. He said, no, there's a reason and a purpose behind it, and I heard your prayer. Remember, when God says he's going to answer us, he never said he's going to do what we want him to do. He says he will answer your prayer. It's what he says. So when we look at this passage and we see that he had false witnesses trying to accuse him, and they couldn't. Until what? Until he was accused of something he actually did. And it's not wrong what he did. What did it say he did? He was accused of being able to destroy the temple of God and to raise it again in 3 days. That's what it says here in verse 61. And what happened? The high priest says, well, you don't want to answer? What about what these witnesses said? Jesus held his peace. And it says, that he called him out. The high priest called him by the authority of the Son of God. If you be Christ, admit it, basically. And Jesus said, thou hast said. Nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall you see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. He said, yeah, I am he. I am the Christ. Then the high priest said, that's it. He's guilty of death. And then to add in one more little lick, when the men were beating him, and they spit in his face and beat him, basically. And what happened? One of them said, hey, tell us who it was that hit you. That's what Jesus faced for you and for me. Look, there's more in there that we could pull out and to really dwell on. But I think I made the point abundantly clear for you today, for your daily encouragement. Is what you're going through worse than what Jesus went through for you? I'm not saying what you're dealing with is easy. I'm not saying it's not difficult. I'm not saying it doesn't suck. I use that word again. I'm not telling you any of those things. But what I'm asking you is not to compare to me, or not to use my thinking or my rationale. Honestly, I'm telling you not even to use your own rationale, your own thinking. Because you know what? If we think with our heart, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Our hearts can be fooled. Our emotions can be fooled. Why do you think when the Bible talks about bitterness, it doesn't just say bitterness, it says a root? Because that bitter feeling will grow, and it'll encompass your emotions and your feelings, and it'll take those and drive you to then be angry, to then be vindictive, to then be resentful and angry and sinful. You avoid those. Don't think with your emotions. Understand what God said, and literally look at his word and say, Lord, help me to have this right mindset, this thought process, that you know what's best, and you have a big reason and a purpose for the things I'm going through. Well, that's our thought for the day. That's your encouragement for the day. Remember what he's been through. Just to give you a heads up, the next couple pieces is onefold. We've got one more section of the chapter. And we might spend a long time on it, we might not. We're going to let the Lord lead on that one. But it's now Peter. And now his opportunity to fulfill what he said, that I'll never neglect you. I'll never do that. What's the result? You know the answer. But until the next time, we'll hold off. I hope you're encouraged today. Like, subscribe, and hopefully just keep me going forward. That's what I'm going to try to do, is continue this, not only just to encourage you, but to encourage me as well. Until the next time, be encouraged. I'm going to give it a couple seconds just to make sure you heard all that. Take care.